Mr. Kip Sorensen, what's up, brother? Good to see you again, man.
Good to see you. That beautiful face of yours.
I might sound a little nasally today. If it is the case, just deal with it.
Well, I keep thinking your camera's bust, like you have a crack in your camera, and that's why your
Yeah,
nose looks
it's because I'm
crooked.
turning.
But
It's because I hold my head like this, so I just got to compensate and straighten my nose out by just turning it this way or
you have a
this
choice:
way.
keep your head straight or your nose straight. But you can't do both. Yeah,
I'll keep my head straight. My nose is sitting. I mean, it's noticeable, right? Like it is crooked for sure.
yeah. It's crooked.
Yeah, so I
It's
broke my
kind of
nose
going
today.
over, or at
It's
least
going that way.
to your left. Yeah,
It's going this way. Yeah, I'm pretty confident I broke my nose today.
Okay, so you got to tell like how like a random leg to the face during
No,
a roll. Like how did this happen?
I ate a forearm / elbow, and okay, so here's what was happening. So me and my training partner Brody Cousineau were rolling this morning because we do twice a week in the morning, and then I go in the evening a couple times a week as well. But yeah, him and I were training, and I mean we're both pretty new to the sport, so it isn't super. Like it's not a whole lot of finesse. Let's just be honest. All right, it's not a whole lot of
Yeah.
finesse. We're both a little
And
rough around the edges.
and would you say a little bit more aggression than necessary
Oh, dude,
in
we
there
go
as well? Or
hard. Like we go hard on each other. I'm surprised that we haven't hurt each other worse than we have. Like he
well,
doesn't like to lose. I don't like to lose. He won't tap on something he should tap a whole lot sooner too. I won't do the same thing. Like we go hard, dude. We go really
yeah.
hard.
Well, and that's the benefit of this of these podcasts being on YouTube as well. And by the way, join us on YouTube. Is
Yes.
we see how well your partnership is working out on your face every
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
week. Because last week it was a scratch across the bridge of the nose. This week it's a busted nose. So
Yeah.
anyhow, sorry.
So I was in his guard. I think I was in his closed guard. I broke his closed guard and opened it up and backed up a little bit because he wasn't holding like my arms or lapel. So I backed up and I grabbed his knees and I went for an X pass.
Yeah.
And so I shoved it would have been his right leg down because I was going for a pass on the left.
To tuck it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I shove his leg down to cross and you know on the X pass, like you crash onto him, right?
Yeah. You drive your shoulder
On your
right
shoulder.
into him. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm going like this, but I think I must have gone like this instead of like this because he framed. As soon as I passed his leg, he framed and he went whack. And he hit and I heard this little and I was like, oh, it hurts so bad, man. I got teary-eyed real quick. And then he's like, oh, I'm sorry. Did I hit you in the chin? I'm like, no, bro, you got me in the nose. And my eyes are just watering. And I'm like, I'm good. Just keep rolling. And I passed his guard. So I was in side control. And I finally just kind of like flopped on him. I'm like, just give me a second, dude. And I rolled off him. I went into the bathroom. And I'm like, yep, it's broken. So then I get out. I'm like, it actually doesn't hurt. It hurts now. It didn't hurt then. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I broke it. And he's like, oh, do you just want to work technique? I'm like, no, man, let's just keep rolling. So I'm like, there's nothing I can do about it. So we kept rolling. And now it hurts, man. It hurts. I
Yeah.
can feel it. So,
And
yeah.
and now it will be like a magnet to all limbs when you train.
Totally.
Because it seems like whenever you have an injury, you're like,
Totally.
oh, okay, I'll just play it safe, and then everything comes to it and
Everything
hits
just
it constantly.
touches
You're
it.
like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not going to stop training. Like we've got I'm going to train tomorrow night.
Who
I'm
needs
not
a
going to stop
nose?
train.
Yeah,
It's just a
Yeah.
nose. Like I can breathe out of my mouth if this thing completely shuts off. So I don't know. It's not too bad. I mean, it's sore.
I mean, maybe once the swelling goes down, yeah, it might
yeah,
get better.
maybe next week it'll be black and blue. I don't know. We'll see. But it's part of the fun, man. It's part of the fun.
Yeah. Oh man, I love it. and I was joking around with someone just last week about this. Is like, yeah, because you'll hear this sometimes on YouTube when you look up jujitsu, right? You Google jujitsu, and you'll hear things like the gentle art. And one of the benefits of jujitsu is you can go 100% and no one ever gets injured, and you can train into your 90s, right? And I was cracking the joke last week. I'm like, you know what? It's really not very gentle, right? Like with everyone has like blown out knees, guys are injured,
Seriously.
ribs cracked.
Whoever
like,
wrote that is either never trained jujitsu or is way better than I am.
yeah. Well, and I think what they're saying is because we're not striking,
You're not striking.
We can't.
Sure.
We can go 100. Because there's not very many martial arts that you can actually go 100% with someone.
Well,
and so we do get that benefit. But
yeah, and you got to think about if we were boxing, my training session would have been done. Like I'm like I can't box hit me in the nose again. But instead I was like, no, we can keep going. So I get it for sure, but but it's
not as gentle as I like some people might think it is.
That's good because here's the other thing I've thought about too is when else in what other realm of life is a man going to be able to physically exert himself against another human being outside of an emergency situation, some sort of violent encounter? There's no, even if you play pickup basketball or flag football or softball or baseball, once you're out of high school or college or maybe professional athletes for some of you guys, there's no other situation in which, martial arts that is, where you won't be able to exert yourself physically against another human being that's trying to do the same thing to you. And there's just something very satisfying about it, very fulfilling and rewarding, but also very translatable to the rest of your life when you can't punch your boss in the nose or you can't, strangle your client that you'd like to. There's just something very good about that.
And that confidence of defending oneself. And I was even thinking about, as I'm doing this, I'm sure guys are tired of hearing me saying this, but as I'm doing this EMT training with my wife, I'm learning like all these things that we naturally do, our bodies naturally, all these processes our bodies naturally do, you're overcoming them in jiu-jitsu, right? The feeling of giving up, the respiration, the breathing, you know what I mean? Like trying to calm it down. Like there's all these natural tendencies that kind of show up in jiu-jitsu, and to be good at it and to last in it, you're fighting against them. Oh, you are using your mind over your constantly in so many different areas. And I think that is highly rewarding as well.
Yeah. I was training with Pete last night and he just put a ton of pressure on my chest. And I was like, my hand was here. I'm like, I'm not going to tap to him putting pressure on me. I'm not going to do that. So
but you wanted to.
Oh, I totally wanted to, for sure, because it was uncomfortable, of course.
Yeah.
Instead, I was like, okay, put your damn hand down and do what you need to do to get out of this place that you're in. Until then, just breathe. Like, just take a breath. Like, and so that respiratory response isn't so, because intuitively you're like, you're hyperventilating.
Yeah, panic. Yeah.
But if you think about it in the context of immediate feedback, and I think that's one of the benefits of jiu-jitsu, it's immediate, instantaneous feedback, right? That hurts. That doesn't work. Oh, don't try that again because that is going to go badly. So it's instantaneous feedback, which is very important. But when in this case, when you have that type of pressure and you're just like, okay, you take 3 deep breaths and then you make your move. I think that's very, very translatable to you getting cut off on the road on your way to work or getting in a fight with your boss about the direction
emotional control,
of whatever. Yeah. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I with my 2 girls, I do them every so often. They're great now. At first, they didn't like it, but I will grab one of my daughters and I'll just pin her. And at first she'd be like, and I'm like, calm down, breathe soft. You know what I mean? And she'll just like, I'm like, see, everything's okay. You know what I mean? Uncomfortable, right? She's like, yeah, I don't like it. I'm like, that's good. You know what I mean? And then I'll let her go.
Feel it,
so then that way, when we do train, she doesn't freak out, right? And they're great now. Like they'll totally, my 7-year-old, she struggles a little bit still. She's like, and she'll try to like, as I pin her, 180 pounds. Yeah, on a 7-year-old. I destroyed her. Destroyed her. Yeah.
That is funny. A lot of guys actually have questions about getting their kids involved in jiu-jitsu. And you actually said something funny. You said, I train with my daughters, or my youngest daughter, she just doesn't know it. And I thought that was really telling because my first son, so my oldest, he's all about it. Like he'll train, he'll drill, he'll go through technique. He'll go through the whole thing. My second's like, no, I don't want to do that. But he's intense. And so I have to disguise jiu-jitsu with him. So for him, it's just like, we just play games. And I'm like, see if you can get past my feet. And I don't tell him it's jiu-jitsu. I'm like, just see if you can get past my feet. And he's like doing all this stuff. I'm like, he's doing jiu-jitsu. He just doesn't know it. You know, so you have to approach it different with each kid.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I have my hope is that it's funny what we learn as parents, right? Like I have a 2-year-old and I'm realizing like with my older kids, I didn't prep them early enough to do chores. I didn't prep them early enough to do jiu-jitsu. My 2-year-old does the trash now with me. So I come home and I'm like, let's do trash. And he's all excited and he empties trash cans in the bag. He thinks this is, and my hope is before he's even aware of it, this is just status quo, right? Like he doesn't even know that there's an even option to take out the trash, right? That this is just part of his duties of life. And it goes the same thing with him. Like I'll send you this video, but I have this video of him doing double leg takedowns on my daughters and he's 2. He's just grabbing both legs and he's like dumping them. And he's like dumping them. Awesome. And he thinks it's the funniest thing in the world. I'm like, this is so funny. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, man.
All right, man.
Anyhow,
well, I think we're warmed up. Let's get to questions today.
Yeah. So our questions today, Facebook. Join us there, facebook.com/group/Order of Man. We got a bunch. And yeah, some good questions actually from the Facebook group today. So, actually, yeah, I mean, it's rare.
Surprisingly, we got some good questions. Trust me, guys.
You know what I mean.
We still have faith in a large percentage of you in the Facebook group. We still have faith in you, so we haven't given up totally, guys. Come on.
Yeah, you guys are the heart of your first line of defense for the Order of Man movement.
Fair enough.
All right, Joshua Hyman. When or is there a right time to quit your job and start a business? Should you start up while working at your current employer and then progress full-time into your own business? Should you be debt-free or very close to it? I know we've answered this question before, but I don't know, maybe a quick response.
I think if you wait until you're debt-free or everything's just perfect, you're probably going to be waiting forever. So I think you need to take the leap sooner than you think you do, because there's always going to be an element of risk when it comes to starting a new business and then walking away from, well, in my case, I walked away from 6 figures of residual income. So you're walking away from maybe residual income or a salary. And so there's always a risk associated with that. And I think this is more applicable to men. We're usually more willing and capable of shouldering that risk relative to our female counterparts. I think generally, I would say that's just true. We're
a little bit more we feel more natural for it
to take a risk, right? Yeah, for sure. But that said, that doesn't absolve the sort of risk or fear that comes along with that. So I think the greater likelihood is that you're waiting too long, not going too early. Now there is the thought out there that says, just jump, just burn the boats, burn the bridges.
Yeah.
I think if you're young and you don't have a wife, you don't have kids, you don't have a house, you don't have debt, I might say, yeah, actually, I would.
And the risk is minimal. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, yeah, do that. In fact, people ask, like, what advice do you have for young people? I'm like, go on as many trips, tour the world, get as many experiences, try everything that comes to your mind, because it's not going to get any easier to do, and the risk is relatively low for you right now. If things get bad, worst case scenario, you can put your tail between your legs and run on home. I'm not suggesting you do that, but you could.
Yeah.
But as a 40-year-old man, not happening.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, like, this isn't just advice that we'd give you that we want to take advantage of, right? Like my 19-year-old son right now, he's like, yeah, I'm not sure. Like he's like wavering in regards to like his next step. And I told him, I'm like, dude, save up a few grand, go to Thailand. Yeah. What for? Just to go there and live there for like 6 months and like live on a boat, man. Like seriously, like do whatever it is that you wanted to experience and try. Like, and that's honestly like my advice to him, not like, settle down. And I'm like, dude, figure out experience, like figure out what you want to do, experience life, like run, go for it. His mom,
as long as there's intentionality about it. Well, yeah, because that goes back to what we were saying a minute ago. Of course she doesn't want him to do that. That's risky. Yeah. So I wouldn't send my daughter to do that. I wouldn't encourage her to do that.
That's true. I wouldn't either.
Right. So of course that's the power of having a lovely woman in your life who brings a perspective that you don't typically consider or isn't your strength on your own. That's the power of having a man and a woman in the relationship to father and mother children. You guys don't, and people say, I don't understand women. No shit, you're not supposed to. If you actually understood them, you would be more like them, and then that wouldn't be any benefit to society. And women will say, well, we don't get men. Yeah, of course. We don't. You shouldn't be able to fully understand, because then you would be like us, and that doesn't benefit. So it's good that we don't fully understand each other. We respect each other, but we don't understand each other. Okay, so back to this guy's question. So it depends on where you're at. So if you're young, you don't have a whole lot of responsibility, or I don't want to say responsibility necessarily, but you don't have obligations, wife, mortgage, kids, et cetera,
less risk.
Then maybe, less risk. Then maybe you take a leap sooner. If you've got a kid and you've got a wife and you've got a mortgage and you've got car payments and things, like, it's going to take you a little bit longer. So here's what I would suggest, just to put a tangible date on it, is sit down right now and figure out what your minimum monthly expenses are. Your minimum monthly expenses, like bare bones. We're going to skim the groceries. We're just gonna pay the service the debt, but we're not gonna have a bunch of unnecessary discretionary expenses. Like okay, so it's $2,000 a month, whatever it is, whatever. Just pick your number, $3,000, let's say. Okay, well, you need to be. If we look at the math, let's just look at the math. You need to be making $3,000 a month with your business to quit your job. Not 5, not 7, not 10, 3, because that's what covers your expenses. Yeah. Or here's another way to look at this. You look at the trajectory of your business. Let's say last month you did $1,000 in revenue, and you did that for the last 90 days, and now you're at 2,000, and you see that for 60 to 90 days. And so you can figure in maybe another 90 days, maybe you'll be at that 3,000 mark. So that means that you need to have $9,000 in savings to be able to cover and float. Actually, it's not even that much. It's the difference between 2 and 3. So it's $1,000 a month. So you need to have $3,000 in savings to float you until you get to that $3,000 a month salary. So I think this is a combination of logic and reason, and assuming a little bit more risk and stepping outside of your comfort zone than you would feel comfortable with. Because if you're comfortable with it, you'll never do it. So you have to be uncomfortable with it to some degree. Does that quantify it a little bit? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. That's what I would suggest. And what I like about what you said, Ryan, is I think far too often people say they want something, but they're never clear on the price that they're willing to pay for it. They're not clear on what they're willing to do or what they're not willing to do. And by doing what you just said is by looking at your budget and saying, okay, what is our absolute necessary income? That's kind of me looking at the grand scheme of things and going, what am I willing to go without? What am I willing to sacrifice to make this happen? And that's really great to do, because some guys may come to the table and go, actually, no, I'm not willing to sacrifice those things. Then awesome. Don't do it then. Right.
And that's okay, actually.
But to act on something and not be clear on the cost of it is just a waste of your time.
I actually can appreciate somebody who says, yeah, I'm not willing to pay that price. I appreciate and respect that individual more than the guy who says, I'm willing to do anything, and you tell him what to do. He's like, accept that.
Yeah. 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 And this goes for everybody. Yeah. And this goes for everyone that says, I want to be rich, right? It's like, I would love to be rich. Are you willing to pay the price? Oh, what does that look like? Lay it on the table? No, I'm not willing to.
And they don't ever say that, right?
I know. Yeah.
They of course, they're not going to say that, but they are. I mean, that is what they're saying to themselves: is I'm not going to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they're I think being delusional to themselves and saying, "No, I'm doing it all. I am. I'm trying my hardest."
Yeah.
Are you?
Totally. So I think this would be beneficial for Josh. Or Joshua. For you, what this looked like for you specifically is you doubled down, right? You kept working your day job. You started Order of Man, and you kind of ran parallel for a period of time before you were transitioned. And I know every industry is going to be different. What did that parallel timeline look for you? How long did you put in the extra effort and kind of run two things at the same time before you were able to switch?
So I'm not a great example, And I say that because I'm not an Instagram internet sales guru guy who's going to like lie to you and tell you, do it this way because this is what you do.
Yeah.
And it's not sexy. What I'm going to tell you is not sexy. And also I acknowledge it
But
doesn't
real.
apply to everybody. Okay. I spent almost 10 years building up a residual income. And I owned my business too. So I worked for about 7 or 8 months with Order of Man before I even took in any sort of income. We made it about $1,000, $1,200. That first month we actually tried to turn something on. It was like $1,200.
Got it.
And then so that was like 7, 8 months. And then it took a year and a half before I was making some pretty good income. 2 years before I was like, okay, I think I could probably do this.
Okay.
But also I had residual income coming in.
Yeah. You were already established. You were kind of in a position to allow that to happen.
I didn't even need to show up to work, and 6 figures would have continued to come in. Yeah. So I had the residual income coming in. And then when I finally decided to like totally pull the trigger and leave, I sold my business. And I got a big payout when I sold my business.
Yeah.
That's not everybody's situation. So I really don't want to be disingenuous. I'm giving you the advice that I would give if I was in your shoes, but my scenario was probably a little different than 90% of the people out there who want to go on and do their own thing.
Copy. And maybe it's valuable. I'll share how this worked for me. So I was working for Intel and Micron, and I got outsourced to India. That's a nice way of saying I got fired. It was kind of funny because I told my kids, I'm like, I got outsourced. And they're like, did you get fired? I'm like, no. I got outsourced.
Did you not hear me? Even kids
it was not
right
fired,
there, right?
I got laid off, and but I had a good severance package. I had 6 months, and kind of my thought process in the back of my mind was, I have 6 months to try anything, and if it fails, I'll go find a job, And 15 years later, I never had to go find another job. Yeah. Right. So it took me 6 months to just double down, but I wasn't going in parallel. Right. I was like all in. Within 6 months, I was making, to be frank, within a month or two, I was making the equivalent of the same income, if not more than I was already making.
Of course.
And then I was able to ramp up. So for me, I think if I had that savings, of 6 months, then I could have done the same exact thing. But luckily it was a severance package. That was my savings, to be frank. So
for sure. But let's not overlook something that's very important here too, Kip, that I think would be easier to overlook. What most people will do. Okay, let's just say they got a 6 month severance package, and I'm going to throw out numbers here. Could be completely right or wrong, doesn't matter. But let's say they've got $80,000. Okay, let's just say they got $80,000, and they've got 6 months of income coming in. What will most people do? I got time. I'm good. Yeah. I got time. And then a month passes. Oh, no, I still got 5 months. It's like almost half a year. I'm good, man. And then 3 months, and then 2 months. And then they get into the last like 30 days. They're like, oh shit, I got to get a job. That's what most people will do. But you didn't do that.
No.
Right. That's why you're where you are right now, because you didn't do that.
Yeah. I had a month notice before I was officially laid off. I had contracts lined up already before I was even quote unquote laid off. So I was double dipping income for 6 months instead.
So you're not playing any bullshit games that most people do with procrastination, because that's what most people do. So guys, hear us. That's not what Kip did. He didn't say, 6 months. Yeah, I got 6 months to dink around and have fun and tour the world and do all the things. No, it's like, I got to get to work. And you did. And here's where you are right now.
Yeah.
All right, let's drive on.
All right. Michael Doreen, what is the best way to get investing money? I kind of like this question. My apologies if you feel like we've already answered this one too much. But he says, not trying to get rich quick, but wanting to put money to work. So maybe some strategies around putting money to work quickly, with not much more detail from Michael other than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because there's not a whole lot of detail here, but what you do when you're looking at finances is you look at tiers, and there's 4 characteristics when you look at money. So you look at potential rate of return. This is broad, okay, but just you guys will get it. Potential rate of return, level of risk, that's another factor. Taxation is another factor. And liquidity is another factor. So those are the 4 factors that you're looking at. And what typically happens is, based on those 4 factors, you're going to sacrifice another factor to get high on one. So, for example, if you said, I really need a lot of liquidity, okay, you're going to sacrifice rate of return if you do that, and probably taxation as well. If you said, no, I want the highest rate of return, you're probably going to sacrifice, again, just generally speaking, you're probably going to sacrifice some liquidity, and you're going to sacrifice certainly some level of safety.
Yeah.
So when we look at the way that we invest money, when you're just starting out, so I'm going to assume Michael's just starting out because he's asking this question. The tier or the factor that you want to look at most is safety and liquidity when you're just starting out. So if you have no money to your name whatsoever, you need liquidity and you need safety. Now, if you're beyond that, well beyond that, then you can go for high rate of return. You don't need the liquidity because you got another bucket over here, which is liquid. And you don't need safety because you got this money over here that's stable and secure. So you can afford to take greater risks. So when you're just starting out, it's those factors. It's liquidity and safety. And then you build from there. And all of your little pockets of money are all going to have different factors, and they're going to complement each other nicely. So if I have a nice nest egg, let's say I've got 3 to 6 to 9 months of savings in a savings account, then you need to create another bucket over here that poses some higher potential gains. Yes, you're going to sacrifice some risk, but it's okay because you got your 3 to 6 to 9 months over here. So if you're just starting out, I would say you do a savings account. That's not investing, that's saving. That's like you might as well just put it under your mattress. Yeah. Okay, then you start looking at low risk, highly diversified, low turnover mutual funds. So now at least you're investing in the market. So you have the potential of upward gains, but it's so broadly diversified, it's not turned over very often. So you're saving on fees and taxation. That at least you open yourself up to some potential gains. So that's where you move from there. From there, and that might be a mutual fund. From there, you could probably get into a Roth IRA or some sort of employer-sponsored program like a 401k, simplified employee pension, all of these programs. And really what those are, guys, just a crash course in this, that's just tax code. 401k, for example, is just tax code. Roth IRA, it's just tax code. Basically what they're doing is they're saying, we're going to take this bucket of money, this investment right here, and we're going to put it under the umbrella of the Roth IRA, which is just how we're going to treat it from a tax perspective.
Yeah, so how we're going to tax that money.
Yeah, so if you think about it, it's kind of like a vehicle. So the outside of the vehicle is the way that it looks, right? Here's the body shape, here's the color, here's what it is. Then you have the engine underneath the hood of the car, and the engine is the investment. So it could be mutual funds, it could be real estate, it could be gold, it could be artwork. I mean, it could be anything, really.
Yeah, property. Yeah.
Property, yes. And then it's treated this way from a tax perspective. So again, you go savings, you go low turnover, low risk, highly diversified mutual funds, employer-sponsored programs. And from there, I would start really considering investing in businesses, individual businesses. And I'm not necessarily saying individual stocks, although you could get into that a little bit. I'm more suggesting that maybe you want to start a business and you want to throw 50 grand at it. Or Kip, you have this business venture and you're doing this incredible thing with new technology and it's groundbreaking. And I'm like, that actually sounds pretty interesting. I would like to invest $20,000 with you to help you get that started. But that doesn't come immediately. That's up here once I have the foundation built. And just like a building, the more solid the foundation that you build, wide and deep, the taller the building can be, the more stable it will be. So build that foundation out strong, and then you start growing it from there.
Yeah. And would you say some of those business investments could be focused on maybe not even long-term gains, but even just cash flow, like immediate cash flow ideas, just to get more cash coming into the door as well, right?
Give me an example.
Well, I'm thinking about this like on my own. It's like, I think it was was it Sean Whelan that made this post? Someone made a post, which I completely loved, which was like, you want to become a millionaire, sell like 10,000 items that are at $200 each. And when you look at it that way, you're like, could I come up with something that's worth $200?
Oh, sure.
Hell yeah, I could, and so I just think about those kind of scenarios all the time. Like it's even crossed my mind of like, oh man, I should start a business cleaning garbage cans, hire some local kids in the neighborhood, clean garbage cans, generate some cash flow. Like I'm always thinking about those quick little business ideas to just bring more income or cash flow in.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd ever make money long-term from it, but it would be a good just residual cash flow.
Totally. I'll give you an example. I won't name any names here necessarily, but I've got a friend who had a connection. This was years ago. This was probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, who had a connection in China. And he ended up buying a bunch of electronic toys like remote control helicopters and remote RC type cars, things like that. So he bought them in China for the price at wholesale. And then he sold them and he marked it up 200-300%. And he sold them here. And he made a lot of money doing it in a very short period of time. And now he owns his own company. Again, I'm not going to say the company just because I want to respect this person. But now he owns his own company and he manufactures his own merchandise. And he's doing very, very well with it. But the launching point was buying cheap shit from China and then marketing it up 200-300%, selling it. And now here's where he is now. So yeah, there's so many I mean, even Sean Whelan, he talks about going to yard sales and finding, an old elliptical or an old treadmill or an old this or that, and then he marks it up 200% and he sells it on Facebook for free.
Yeah.
So the opportunities are there, and people's like, "Oh, I can't believe you do that." Why? Like, you could do that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a demand, and as long as it's a voluntary transaction, this individual sold it for this price and they agreed upon it, and this other individual is willing to pay 2 times more. Who are you to say, well, it's only worth this much? It's worth whatever somebody will pay for it. That's it, period.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I knew a guy that was buying old like classic sneakers, like old Jordans from the 90s, and he would just find all these old shoes in great condition and then resell them at a huge marked up price. And that's all he did.
Good for him.
Yeah.
That's the power of capital. Oh, it's greedy. Well, no, it's creative.
Yeah.
It's using a little initiative.
Yeah. And like you always say, it's like, that's the beautiful of capitalism is like, if there wasn't a demand, then there would be no transaction.
Right.
So you're providing a service that someone's willing to pay. We're not robbing people.
This is the thing I get so upset. We'll use actors and athletes. People say, oh, they get paid too much. Really? Did you buy a ticket to the game? Did you pay for the pay-per-view for UFC? Yes. Then shut up.
Yeah. Apparently not. They're getting paid too much.
Right. Because you actually voted. You said, I think this person should get some of my money. If you think they get paid too much, then just don't support them. And if enough people do that because they believe like you, then their pay will go down. This is the whole concept. Remember a year or two ago, I think it was the women's soccer team. They wanted to make more money.
Yeah.
They wanted to make as much as the men. And it's like, well, but not as many people want to come see you as the men. So why would we pay you more? And guess what their response was? Their response was, oh, well, you just come to more of our games. Like, that's how you can support us. Come to more of our games. Yes, that's right.
That's the answer.
That's the answer. Not just gift you more money. It's like, no, have more people come to your games. And if they don't, then you're not worth as much. I'm not talking about human worth. I'm talking about your salary.
Yeah, your service, the service in which you're providing.
It's valuable. Yeah. That's it.
Totally. Well, and have you seen that interview with Ronda Rousey where it was a press conference when she was getting ready for, I think, her fight with Misha Tate. Okay. And a journalist asked her about gender equality and pay. Have you seen this?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's great. Oh yeah. You got to watch it. But ultimately she was like, I get paid more than most male fighters. There's actually only a few male fighters that make more money than me, and has nothing to do with my sex, my gender, or anything else. It comes down to people want to see me fight.
That's right.
I'm an entertaining fighter, so thus I get paid more.
Right.
That's simple.
Conor McGregor is a master at this. I mean, let's be real. He's a good fighter. He's not the best fighter in the world or ever. Like we know that, right?
Yeah.
We know that. Objectively, we know that. And yet he is one of the highest paid fighters of all time.
Yeah.
Because he realized it goes well beyond just what he does in the cage. It's what he does outside of it. And he learned how to market himself and make himself more valuable.
Totally. And part of that market is people hating him, because even the guys that hate Conor McGregor want to see him fight in hopes that he gets his face punched.
Right.
And the guys who love him want to see him fight because they want to see him win. So we all want to see him. We all want to see him fight, right? And he benefits from it all, even though we may not like him.
As you said that, I don't know if you heard me, but I almost snorted as I was laughing. I think it has something to do with what's going on in here.
Then you felt pain shoot into your head.
I actually sneezed this morning, and I was like, "Oh, don't sneeze anymore." That.
What you should do is get a COVID-19 test. Yeah, that's what you need to do.
It is. It's COVID. That's the reason my nose is crooked. It's COVID.
It's COVID. It makes people's nose crooked. All right. Savrio Petrini. Sorry, man. Writing from Italy. We are all following the chaos happening in your country. Apart from trying to give an alternative point of view to the MSM propaganda, how can we help from abroad? You can't imagine how many of us want to help. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It's nice. It's a nice gesture, but help with what? I'm not quite sure. Like what would you
just the chaos, the misinformation probably. I mean, since he brought up the alternative view of MSM,
Yeah, look, I don't know. I don't know about Italy and how the country is run. This is not my purview. This is not something I focus on. So I might just be sticking my foot in my mouth, which I'm more than happy to do always. The only thing I would say is just share the truth of your current situation. What's working well, what isn't working well. Because I think the country, our country, America, is going down a path that we're very ignorant generally and collectively about the path that we're taking, which appears to be a trend towards more socialism, Marxism, that sort of thing, an ultimate, some sort of just hate and vitriol towards the concept of individual liberty and capitalism. And it's very nice and easy to be able to yap about that when you don't have to deal with and never have dealt with the ramifications of a communist or socialist society. So I think the best thing that any person outside of the U.S. can do is to say, look, this is the path that we took, and this is why it didn't work, or this is why it did work, and share that perspective. But outside of that, I don't know. I don't know. I really don't. I'm kind of at a loss on what you might be able to do to help, but just keep sharing your perspective. I think that's valuable. And that's it. I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss on that. That's a good question. I just kind of at a loss on it.
I think it's a bit, and it's almost the same response that we'd give every guy, right? Like, how do you help, right? We stand for truth and righteousness. We, stand for things that are correct. Yeah. We share.
Well, and here's another
message. We're good examples, right?
And get involved with the things that you feel are valuable. So if there's companies that you really support, for example, I believe in the power of American manufacturing. So if he's like, how can we help? Well, maybe you support America by buying American. If you really do want to help, like Origin's a great company. There's plenty of great companies out there that are 100% made and sourced in America. I just bought some boots, crispy boots. I think they're made in Italy, in fact. But that's a great thing. The point I'm making is that if there's organizations or businesses that you support and you believe in what they're doing, then that's good too. Vote with your dollars. And that's a great way to support. Even if it's just charity. You find a charity that's here in the U.S. and you think this is a valuable cause, whatever that cause may be, then consider donating and sending some of your hard-earned money to that charity or that organization or that business, and that goes a long way, for sure.
Yeah. Love it. All right, Nathan Hansler. Since about month 11 of my marriage, my wife has taken over our budget. She is much better at numbers than I am, and she has a real knack and a love for it. When I took care of the budget, she would always get anxiety and fret over it was done correctly, and it was a constant argument in our marriage. I decided to delegate and let her do the thing as she desired to do, even if it was even if it was being in charge of the finances, and now we're in a better place in relationship wise because of less money arguments. My question is, does giving up my sovereignty to my wife over our finances truly make me lose my sovereignty and make me less of a man? Or am I taking my role as leader of the house by delegating the job to my wife and maintaining my sovereignty?
Okay, so let's just get this out of the way. There's a real misconception about what sovereignty is. Okay, sovereignty doesn't mean that you can't have other people around you doing things in your life and helping. You're not relinquishing sovereignty by doing that. Because if that were true, then Kip, I would be relinquishing some of my sovereignty by having you on this podcast with me.
Yeah.
But am I?
And we would never get anything done because we don't have enough time to.
Right.
Yeah.
Or am I relinquishing my sovereignty because Cody edits the podcast and he does a wonderful job and does a better job than me, but because I'm not doing it, so I'm relinquishing my sovereignty? No, of course not. So guys, sovereignty is a really cool word, but it's very often misunderstood. And in fact, a lot of people talk about this in the concept of the gospel. Like, how can you be a sovereign man but believe in God and give your life to Jesus? Because you voluntarily did that, and it helps you to have the type of life that you want to have. So you're not relinquishing sovereignty. Sovereignty is losing control. It's blindly following. It's being subjected to or enslaved in an extreme circumstance to another person or party or organization. That's what I'm talking about. So, for example, if you go into your debt up to your eyeballs and you can never get out from under this debt, yes, you've relinquished some of your sovereignty. But who services the debt and who decides like how much we're going to put towards this, and that's like, this is delegation. Like, yeah. If you thought that was the case, why in the world would any guy get married? Like, so my experience being married has that's been one of the greatest blessings of my life. It's magnified my abilities to perform, not subjected me to her desires. Like, it's actually helped and magnified what I want to do. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to ask, in Nathan's example, how would you but how would you change his circumstance to represent him losing sovereignty?
In what way would it?
Yeah, like for instance, well, maybe I'll just try and you can tell me if I'm on target here. So in Nathan's example of his wife doing budget, him not having sovereignty would be blinders on. His wife's doing the budget. He's completely unaware of anything. He probably demonizes her, complains that it's done incorrectly, whatever, but yet has no part in what's going on and is a victim of her paying the bills and washed his hands of it. Would you say in that example?
Sure. Here's an even more tangible example.
Okay.
If you have to go to your wife and you have to say, hey, hon, I'd like to go out to the game with the guys, and can I get $50 to do that? And she says, no, we're doing this and this and this. Okay. And then you leave with your tail tucked between your legs. Okay. Yeah. You relinquish some of your sovereignty. Okay. Now, counter to that, I'm not saying that you can just go spend reckless. My wife doesn't have to call me if she wants to make a $100 purchase. Like, she doesn't have to call me for that because I trust her. I don't have to call her. Now, if I'm going to make a $500 purchase, just out of respect, I might say, hey, hon, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking about purchasing this thing. Are you good with that? Is there any things I need to be aware of or whatever? And I'm not even asking for permission. I'm just kind of telling her this is what I'm going to do. And so, like, get on board with it. And she would have to do the same thing. Like, if she was going to make a $1,000 purchase, she would call me, not because I've told her to, but she would call me and say, hey, I really need some new clothes for me and the kids, and we're going to spend $1,000. Like, anything I need to be aware of? Is that okay? Are we're good? And I would say yes or no, depending on the situation.
That's out of respect. Yeah.
Yes. It's just a level of respect. But she's not asking me for my permission. I'm not asking her for her permission. So yeah, and I'll hear this guy in the concept of guys going, like, hey, yeah, I'd really like to come hang out with you guys, but my wife won't let me tonight because ... Sovereignty issue.
Yeah.
Now, if I said, hey, guys, I'd really like to come tonight, but my wife's been planning this vacation for 2 weeks and she left, so I'm with the kids. I won't be able to make it tonight. Not a sovereignty issue. You guys made that choice together. You're staying with the kids. It's not a sovereignty issue. But if you're begging and asking to do things from your wife, yeah, you got issues that you need to work on. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how would you relate this same exact conversation to presiding?
Can you be more specific with that question?
Well, I think there's a correlation between sovereignty and presiding in some way, right? So if Nathan is in a position where he's presiding, what does that budget now look like? What does that managing the budget and the finances look like from the position of presiding, not necessarily doing the work though?
Yeah, so I'm a believer in the whole idea and the concept of the buck stops here. So let's just hypothetically assume, and it doesn't sound like this is the case, but let's assume that your wife is doing a horrible job.
Yeah.
The bills aren't getting paid. The debt isn't being managed. You're going in the hole. No idea where the money is and where it's going. None. No idea what's happening here. That's a leadership issue. So you need to dial it in because the buck stops here. Who does it stop with? The man.
You. Yep.
You're the patriarch. You're the leader of the home. And I know there's a lot of women listening. I know there's a lot of men listening. Some of you are agreeing. Some of you are not. The deal is you're the man of the home. Because look, when shit hits the fan, nobody ever turns to the woman. No one. Like, when's the last time somebody turned to a woman when things were dire? And it's not to be demeaning towards women. I'm just saying we look to the man. And so if the financial house is out of order, it's your fault. Well, but she does the thing. Yes, but it's also your responsibility. I wrote a couple things here as I was listening to your question. There's a couple of things that can't be outsourced. Finances is one of them. Now, that doesn't mean people can't help you. I don't do my own taxes. I have an accountant, a CPA, who does a wonderful job. He helps me with my taxes. But if he gets it wrong, who has to pay? Not him, me.
Yeah.
So if he's doing a crappy job, guess whose fault that is? Mine, because I hired him. And I need to probably fire him or get on the same page and figure out what's going on. It's still my responsibility. The buck stops here. Finance is one of them. Health. I can't have somebody else go do my push-ups for me. Like, I can't eat like shit and then have somebody else eat all the celery and carrots and salads and healthy food and then I'll be healthy. Like, you can't outsource that.
Yeah,
but you can hire a coach.
Yeah, or expect your coach to make you healthy even though you're unwilling to follow the diet.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. You hire a coach. You buy a program. You buy a course. That doesn't relinquish your sovereignty. It's just like, no, I need some help in this. And actually, it magnifies your sovereignty because you'll be in more control of your life if you're healthy, if you're financially successful. Another one, relationships. I can't outsource my relationships. Like, I can't have somebody else call you, Kip, and say, hey, Ryan really misses you, and he hopes everything's going well for you, and he just wants to be a good friend.
That'd feel genuine for sure.
It's like you can't outsource. But I could have somebody help me manage it. I could have a program, for example, that says, hey, it's been a little while since you talked to Kip. You might want to reach out to him. Yep. And then I have a good friend who does this, in fact. And I don't feel slighted in the least. In fact, I feel important. Jordan Harbinger, the Jordan Harbinger podcast. Without fail, I would say, I don't know his schedule. He's got it on a program or a calendar somewhere, obviously. But every 2 to 3 months, I get a message if I haven't heard from him or we haven't chatted beforehand. And he'll just say, hey, Ryan, I was just thinking about you. I hope all's going well. I ran across this cool thing, and it sounds like something you'd be interested in or something that you would like. And it's like very simple. I know for a fact that he's got a program or a software or something in some database where it's like, follow up with Ryan. Maybe it's even a person that says, you haven't talked to Ryan for a while. Follow up. I know that for a fact because he's told me. Yeah. I don't feel slighted. I'm in his program. I'm in his system. He makes the effort to go do it. You can't outsource it, but you can have help. And that's what we're talking about here. You can't outsource your finances, but you can have help managing it. In this case, your wife does a better job than you. That shouldn't that shouldn't make you feel like less of a man. In fact, you should feel more manly because shit's getting done and you're not having to do it. So you've managed your resources very, very well. I know it sounds cold to talk about your wife in the context of a resource, how I'm saying it, but it is. It's you're managing your resources very well to ensure that the family is being managed correctly. And so you shouldn't feel like less of a man. If it's getting done and it's getting done right, you should feel more of a man because the buck stops with you and it's getting done.
Yeah, just don't give up the ownership of
yes.
if it goes south. You need to continue to own it.
Yeah, if it goes south and you're like, well, it's your fault, blah, 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 blah. No, you managed your resources incorrectly. You had somebody do it. Like I would, let's be frank here. I'm not going to give the finances over to my wife because it wouldn't go as well as if I did it.
Yeah.
That's our
dynamic. She probably knows that.
She knows that. Of course she knows that. She doesn't even want to do it. Why would she want to do that? She hates it. Okay, so I manage my resources correctly. Now the cooking, I hate cooking. I don't want to cook. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to read cookbooks. I don't want to spend time. I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to. But everybody in the house needs to get fed. So here's what the deal is. I'll provide the food. Either we'll go kill it or I'll pay for it. And then you prepare it for us. How's that sound? Perfect. Good. Everybody wins. Yeah. Sovereignty maintained. Masculinity intact. All is good.
Copy. All right. Jeremy Hall, one lesson you learned in 2020 that you want to carry into 2021, professionally or personally?
One lesson that I want to learn.
Or anything stand out?
2020 was a very good year for us. So I know it's been hard for a lot of people, but I feel like, okay, here's a lesson. I hadn't even thought about it, so you just said it. So we moved here about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now, about a year and a half ago.
Jeez. Time flies, man.
Time flies. Before COVID was a thing or a consideration, about 6 to 8 months before it was a thing. And we decided at the time that we're going to move to Maine, away from our house and our friends, and really the only thing that we've ever known for 20, 30 years. We're going to pull our kids out of the school system. We're going to start homeschooling them. Like everything that we did, we had no idea why we did it. Other than we wanted to try something new, we wanted to do an adventure, we wanted all these things.
And that's a lot all at the same time.
That's a lot. It was a big, audacious, crazy thing to do. And then COVID hits. And I just told you, 2020 was a very good year for us. It would not be the same if we were in Utah. It would not be the same if I didn't take a few more intuitive risks. I say intuitive. I say that deliberately. The word choice that I would use just for my own personal explanation of it would be divinely inspired. Risks that my wife and I took in order to lead our family and do what we thought was in their best interest. And because we made those choices, and they weren't always rational, they weren't always sane, they weren't always well calculated or well thought out, but they were divinely inspired, set us up very, very nicely for 2020. And I have a sinking suspicion that in 2021, they will continue to be the same. That's not to say we're not going to go without our challenges. We will. But the lesson is this. There's a factor that's hard to quantify. And for men who tend to be more analytical in nature, scientific, a lot of engineer types, numbers guys, prove it. Prove it to me. Show me the data. Show me where it is. Show me. Prove that that's going to work. There's other factors at work, guys. And you ignore those at your own peril. If you can't take in all of the factors, the tangible ones and the intangible ones, and then make your decisions based on everything, then you're leaving some important considerations off the table that could actually lead you to a better place. And sometimes you won't always be able to explain why. And you know what? It's okay. It's okay. Who do I need to explain it to? I don't need to explain to you why I moved to Maine. I don't need to explain to you why we decided to homeschool our children a year and a half ago. I don't need to explain anything to anybody except for maybe my wife and my children so they understand what we're doing, and then my Creator when I meet him in heaven someday, hopefully in heaven. Those are the only people I need to explain things to. Everybody else doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter.
Which is interesting that we do that, though. Like, that's a human behavior to go like, well, how do I explain this? Like, it's almost innate for us to, I know, but it's interesting how I don't know, how that's just kind of a standard.
We don't want to feel
default
bad. We don't want to make
sometimes.
people feel bad.
Yeah.
Like Kip, for example, if you called me up and you're like, and I was in your area and you said, hey, will you help me move this weekend? I'd be like, oh, no, I can't because, right? Like, why do we need to say that? Why can't you just say I can't? Yeah. No, I can't this weekend, Kip. Thanks.
I don't want
Appreciate
to.
You. Good luck. No, that sounds miserable. Good luck. But you can borrow my truck. You can have my truck if you want for the weekend.
Yeah. Did you just
I'll
ask me to do
vehicles.
something that's not fun? Why would I help you?
I mean, it's good to be charitable, of course, but you get the point. Is like, actually, this ties in nicely. I know you're the master of segues on this podcast, but I'm gonna throw one out here. In the Iron Council, we're talking about being a nice guy, and we're using the book, Robert Glover's book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. So nice guys will have a tendency to try to over-explain and justify everything, and somebody who's not a nice guy, I'm not saying they aren't nice or kind. I'm saying they're not a nice guy. Understand the difference. There is a difference. We all know what it is, so don't pretend you don't. A nice guy wouldn't feel the need to justify every decision he makes.
Because he's not trying to appease everybody all the time. Yeah.
Yes. Because it doesn't matter. It's not a factor. Now, there's certain people I would want to explain myself a little bit more to. But for the most part, it's like, I don't have to justify or rationalize what I do to you, a stranger. I don't have any need to do that. Or to appease your own ego or your own sense of worth. That's on you, not on me.
Yeah. I like it. All right. Stephen Hunt. Kids and adults have a negative connotation around being a tryhard. By the way, I've never heard this term before, so you may want to explain it for those listeners.
Tryhard?
2 examples. Yeah, being a tryhard. He says, 2 examples. I coach youth sports and have had teammates make fun of other players for being a tryhard. As a coach, I wish all my players would try to do their best all the time. Secondly, compare that to a guy trying to talk to a girl or building a friendship. Can you try too hard to gain others' approval? What's the difference between being a try hard and trying your hardest at something, whether relationships or skill-related activities? Is it just a cultural problem, or is there such a thing as trying too hard?
Yeah, I mean, we might get into semantics a little bit here. I've heard the term try hard, and a try hard is somebody who might be
just to look good.
Or like a brown noser, maybe a little bit.
Okay.
You know, I think that when somebody says that, I think that's what they're doing. So the only distinguishing factor here, and it doesn't really matter what word you use, pick your word, but words are important, but the meanings of the words are actually more important, and the context in which they're shared. So because look, you guys could take all sorts of things out of context in this podcast. I might have said something about women earlier about the relationship I have with my wife, and if you took it out of context, it might make me sound like a misogynist or a horrible human being. But if you use it in the context of what I was saying, then it's not as bad. Same thing with our founders. You know, this happens a lot. Oh, our founders were racist. And yes, and I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that everybody was a racist 250. Everybody was a racist 250 years ago. It doesn't make it right. It's just the context. And we've moved a long way from where we were 250 years ago. Right? Yeah. So I say that as just a bit of a forewarning for what I'm going to share with you here, is that with being a try hard, it's really about your motive. The motive is important. So when you say, Stephen says, can you try too hard? It depends on what you mean by try hard. Are you saying try hard for yourself? Like, I want to be the best podcaster, or I want to be the best husband, or I want to do this and I want to excel. Can you try too hard? No, I don't think so. But if you're saying, can I try too hard to gain the acceptance and approval of others and make sure that they like me and get them to notice and acknowledge me, then absolutely you can try too hard.
And compromise my values and who I am as a person and lose my identity in the attempt of being liked by someone.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I think you ought to go to your motives. But look, I mean, the reason that somebody would call somebody a tryhard, if their motives are pure, it's the crab in the bucket mentality. And you just hit on it right now. Yeah. Everybody's heard the analogy. It's like if one crab starts to crawl out of the bucket, the other crabs will literally grab it and pull it down out of the bucket because it doesn't want it to escape. That's what you might be running into. If you have one kid on your team or a handful that are excelling, the ones who aren't excelling, rather than trying to excel and exert themselves, they'll mock and they'll poke and they'll ridicule and they'll make fun of the one who's excelling. So it's your job as a coach to inoculate a young man or woman against that mentality by saying, hey, you know what, Timmy? I see you. I see you every day. You get here early. You're the last one to leave. Every time you get on the field, you're running, you're cheering for other people, you're trying as hard as you can, and I want you to know I acknowledge that, and that will serve you for the rest of your life. I also know, little Timmy, that people don't like you because of that, and they poke at you, and they mock you, and they ridicule, and I want you to know that that too is a sign that you're doing the right thing. So you could use that as an excuse to be less than you're capable of, or you could acknowledge it for a little bit of feedback that says you're on the right path. We don't place ourselves above other people. You're not doing it to boost up your own pride, but you know you're capable of something more, and that's why you try so hard. And when these guys give you a hard time, it's because they have inadequacies in themselves, not in you. Yeah. It's your job to explain that, because kids don't know that. Kids are dickheads. And the other ones who aren't are a little bit ignorant and naive and tender. And it's our job as men to, I don't want to use the word harden. That's why I like the word inoculate. We want to inoculate them against the tendencies of human beings to be miserable to each other.
Yeah. And what a beautiful lesson, right?
Yes,
like the example you just gave. If you can get a kid to realize that, and they can latch onto that and make that a way of being as they get older, oh my goodness, like what's possible, anything.
And also, you have an opportunity to teach your other kids who aren't excelling to that level the same thing. Now, you got to be careful, because you could actually throw little Timmy under the bus by saying, why can't you be all like little Timmy?
Yeah.
Now you just teed him up.
Yeah.
But you can acknowledge not just Timmy, but even, look, if you can find something good, something right, some behavior, even if it's just a little glimpse in the guy who's got an attitude, and you acknowledge it, what do you think that kid with the attitude is going to do next time? He's going to do it even better next time.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. One of my favorite, I don't even know who the quote was. I think it's Stephen Covey says it, you want to change the behavior of a person, change their role. And I think there's a little bit of that is it's giving trust to someone. It's letting them know that you believe in them in a unique way. And a lot of people will shift and they'll kind of rise to the occasion. I think that actually happens in belt promotions and jiu-jitsu, where you guys get promoted and they're like, all right, like
somebody believes
switch turns.
Yeah.
I'm now a blue.
Yeah.
I got to act like one, and then they rise to the occasion. So
yeah, I have there's a soft spot in my heart, and there aren't many, but there's a soft spot in my heart for, I'm telling you, man, for coaches.
Make note.
Seriously, for youth coaches, man, I mean, what do you say about these people? Like, they give up time away from their own families, from their own activities, and they engage with other kids who aren't their own, who are going through there might be something you say, you get in a little kid's face, not in a bad way, but you get in a little kid's face and you say something to him and use just the right word or just the right inflection, or you give him just the right look, and he's never experienced that before. Not at home, not at school. Everybody else thinks he's a loser. His parents are losers. His dad's not around. His mom's, an alcoholic. Whatever the things he's dealing with. You don't know what he's dealing with. And you might just say one little thing. How do I know? Because somebody did it for me. One little thing. And it completely changes their life because you were around. That's an incredible power. And I think we as men ought to utilize it a little bit more than we currently do. We get so wrapped up in our own things. And man, that's one area that I really, really enjoy turning outwards. It's very powerful.
Yeah. And you saying that reminds me why it's so important for coaches to keep kids in sports. You know, I'm thinking about that same young kid that might be playing football and he's learning this stuff from his coaches, and then he stops playing because, you know, it wasn't enjoyable, or, you know what I mean? He wasn't getting the feedback. And so as important as that coaching is, it's also important that these boys kind of stay in too. And that's one of the challenges of a coach is making it rewarding enough that they want to come back, you know, that we don't drive them so hard that they just want to quit either. Right. And so I've at least struggled with that in the past of how do I push these kids in a way to get better, but also so they enjoy the sport. They feel fulfilled by playing the game at the same time.
Yeah. And I think every little athlete you have is a little bit different. You know, I've had, in the years that I've coached football and baseball, is I've had some tremendous athletes who I feel like I can push a little bit harder because their resolve to win and compete and strive is a little bit more strengthened than another. So I feel like I can push on that individual a little bit more. And then I might have somebody who, in fact, I know I've had kids come out and the moms have approached me and said, he's never played baseball before. He only plays video games. His dad's not around. He doesn't have very many friends. And I'm not going to ride that kid like I would the all-star athlete.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm going to encourage the all-star athletes to put his arm around that kid and say, hey, let me show you a couple of things. You know, because it's sometimes more powerful coming from his peer than coming from me. But you have to know your people, right? You have to know this guy I can push in this particular way. And this guy, I just need to make sure he has a good time and he connects discomfort with confidence and overcoming and being proud of himself. I have to make
just
that
being part of a team is his goal. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. One more question. Are you good for
let's
one
do
more?
it. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Joshua King, in a sales role, would hiring a personal coach be a smart decision? At what point in your career? If so, I hear on many podcasts how valuable they can be to help improve the conversation rate and other goal areas, but would like to hear both of your thoughts. Thank you guys. Love the podcast movement. Sorry. I'm not sure if I slaughtered it or if it was odd to read there. So
no, I think I got it. He was talking about just when is the best time to get a sales coach. Look, here's the thing. You're going to have situations where you might have a formal coach and other situations where it might just be informal, like you're listening to a particular podcast. Maybe it's Andy Frasilla's podcast or Ed Milet or any number of podcasts on business and sales, Grant Cardone, that sort of thing. And that's an indirect coach. You might read a book, you might buy a course, you might subscribe to emails, and you should always be doing that. Always be doing that. There isn't a time where you shouldn't be doing that. And then there comes a time where it's time to step it up and to ramp it up a little bit and invest a little bit of money. I wouldn't say so much money that it breaks you, but you have to be uncomfortable. Again, this is about discomfort. You're never going to improve. When I hired my first coaches in my financial planning practice, in fact, I was very, very uncomfortable.
And uncomfortable meaning you were investing a lot of money and it caused a lot of not
stress.
Stress and action, and you wanted to take more action than normal probably because of the investment
I invested all this money. Yeah. I mean, I think it was $10,000 or maybe it was $6,000. I can't exactly remember at this point, but I invested thousands of dollars just to go and to have a ticket to this particular event. I didn't have that money, and I did it anyways because it was a little bit outside of my comfort zone. I felt like it was a good thing. The guy that I went to, he came highly recommended from a trusted source. So I said, okay, well, let's give this a try. And worst case scenario, I'm out $2,000, and that's not a great place to be, but I can make that up. And it ended up working out very, very well for me. And then I continually invest from that point forward. That was probably my real first large investment into coaching and mentoring. And every time I do it, It's just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And then I go back and evaluate. And without fail, everything that I've honestly invested in and I've given it my sincere effort towards implementing the things that have been advised, it always pays huge dividends for me. So I can't give you a number. I can't say when you're making $100,000, you should be doing this much. But once your basic needs are met, I mean, I would legitimately consider investing 10 to 20% of your revenue into coaching. That's just a business expense for me at this point. It's like, no, it's that important that I spend 10 to 20% of the revenue back into the business, not via Facebook and ads and all that. No, into investing in myself to run the business correctly. This is not the day-to-day operations like hiring an accountant or no, in myself. How do I market? How do I do public speaking? How do I build up sales? How do I book better guests? That sort of thing.
Yeah, totally. Well, and we've talked about this in the past, but it's interesting how the value and the commitment that we put on something based upon how much we're willing to sacrifice for it, right? It's like, you know, I'm assuming that if in the examples that you gave, if that coaching was kind of cheap and it was like, not a big deal, you probably wouldn't have done all the things that they told you to do. And then you'd walk away going, yeah, that didn't really help.
Yeah.
Right. Because you weren't invested. Like you weren't putting some skin in the game enough to drive action on your part.
Right. It's also, and you said it was cheap. So cheap, expensive, those are all subjective and relative terms. Yeah. So your cheap is different than somebody else's cheap. So like, I never wanted to come across as like, you should be spending $10,000 a month on this thing. I don't know if you can spend $10,000 a month or $1,000 or $100. I don't know. Maybe $10 is a lot to you. Who am I to say it isn't? I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
All I'm saying is that it's a little bit of a cart before the horse mentality. Like you think, oh, once I get sales, then I can hire a coach. That's backwards. Once you get the instruction, again, whether it's directly or indirectly, that will increase your sales. So make sure you get it right in the right order. You have to learn the information before you apply it. If you apply it, you actually might get lucky. And I have at times. And that's nice. There is a danger in getting lucky though. Yeah. The danger in getting lucky is that you believe you're good at it.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with that. It
False
just means you got lucky. Yeah. If we were to go back to jiu-jitsu, for example, if I were to catch a brown belt in some like weird move that maybe he's never seen, and I saw it this one time on YouTube and I tried it, and it was this really obscure thing that nobody has seen, and I just like caught him, I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm good at this. No. No. Don't confuse. You're not, you got lucky. You need to be able to remove yourself from the results. It's not that you're good at it. It just means you're lucky. Get the right coaching, get the right information so you don't have to rely upon luck. You rely on years and years, potentially even thousands of years, because that's how old books are. Thousands of years of information of getting it right and trying and failing and learning and growing, and get it right and then go perform and evolve from there.
Yeah, I like it. All right, Serge. So as always, guys, you can support the podcast like our brother in Italy, right? The question was, right, how do we help? And you do so by getting on the court with us. And you can do that by joining us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/Order of Man, or join us in our exclusive brotherhood, the Iron Council. You can learn more at orderofman.com/Iron Council. As well, keep in mind, we do have the Battle Ready program. It's a free program which you can sign up for. That's at orderofman.com/Battle Ready. And then, of course, share this message on many platforms, whether it be the podcast, the YouTube channel, and or following Mr. Mickler on Twitter and Instagram at Ryan Mickler. And don't forget your swag for the holiday season, store.orderofman.com.
A little bit of a disclaimer on the store, guys.
Uh-oh.
We are super low on inventory. Like, I just want to let you know I really appreciate the support. And I would say the sales over the last maybe month or so are like 70 to 80% women. So they're getting you stuff, guys. They're getting you stuff. So I apologize ahead of time if we don't have your sizes. My son and I have done an inventory and a new order, placed a lot of orders to get everything back to where it needs to be. So I am sorry. There is some stuff still there. Check it out.
Yeah.
But we're getting a little slim on the pickings in there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So if you get a small for Christmas, it's not because your wife wants you to wear like crazy tight shirts. It just means that we're out of larges.
And then you can maybe she'll just have you exchange it once the larges are. But she wanted to get you something, so she got you a small. But she knows you're an XL, so it's all good. You can exchange it later.
Use it when you go to the gym. When you go to the gym, wear the smalls. Yeah.
All right, you guys. Appreciate it. Good questions today. We'll be back on Friday. Eddie Gallagher's podcast just came out yesterday. So Kip's already done. He's like, I'm turning out the lights. Eddie Gallagher's podcast. We got Marcus and Morgan Luttrell on next week. So that's going to be really cool. I'm going to be doing some traveling early in January for some other, I'm not going to disclose them, but some other cool podcasts coming up. So make sure you subscribe. Leave a rating and review, guys. We appreciate you. We'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, become the man you are meant to be.